Australia's biggest river cannot reach the ocean anymore. A wall of sand has sealed the mouth shut. The river that once pushed through to the sea now ends in a still pool. Since 2002, giant machines have had to dig the sand out every single day just to keep a thin path open. This is not a drought. This is a drain. The Murray-Darling Basin is being emptied on purpose, and you can see exactly how far the damage has gone just by looking at what is left. The Murray-Darling Basin is where Australia grows its food. It covers an area as big as France and Spain put together. It spreads across 4 states. It makes about 40% of the nation's food and brings in roughly $24 billion in farm money every year. The system is not one river. It is a web of streams, wetlands, and flatlands that link the high country to the coast. For thousands of years, floods came in wet seasons and spread across the land. They made shallow lakes that pulled in millions of water birds and kept whole systems alive. Inland Australia runs on this water. Without it, the inside of the country dies. That is what makes it worth breaking. Here is how it is supposed to work. Rain and snow in the hills feed the rivers. Water runs down through channels and wetlands. The rivers join up, get stronger, and reach the ocean. On the way, the flow keeps fish alive, washes salt out of the dirt, and floods the plains when the rains come. The end result is a working river that ties the inside to the sea and keeps the whole basin system going. That is the plan when everything works. But it does not work anymore. Huge amounts of water pulled out for farms drain the rivers faster than rain can fill them back up. The flow drops. The rivers break into separate pools. The wetlands dry up. The mouth closes. The chain of collapse is direct, and every step shows. Start with the river mouth. It used to punch through to the ocean. The flow was strong enough to keep the gap open. Fish could swim up from the sea. Salt got flushed out of the lower parts. The river pushed against the ocean, and the ocean pushed back, but the river had enough force to hold the line. That is what a healthy river does. Now the flow is dropped to almost nothing. Sand piles up faster than the current can move it. The mouth seals shut. The river turns into a pool that does not move. Fish that need to travel between saltwater and freshwater cannot get through anymore. Salt builds up because there is no flow to wash it away. In the lower lakes, salt levels have hit 5 times higher than the ocean. Freshwater has turned into saltwater that is too strong for anything to live in. The animals that live there cannot survive in that. The river mouth has gone from a living edge between river and sea to a dead zone full of poison. You can check this from the air. Where the river should meet the ocean, there is only a sandbar. No flow, no gap. Just a wall of sand where water should be moving. The digging machines are the only thing keeping even a narrow channel open, and without them, the river would be totally cut off. The system is on life support. Move upstream. The fish are dying. Millions of them. Fish like the Murray cod and the golden perch used to swim thousands of kilometers to breed. They needed flowing water and connected places to live. The Murray cod can live for 50 years, long enough to see whole human lives pass. But low flow and broken pools have turned their travel routes into dead ends. The river splits into cut-off pockets with no oxygen. Fish that cannot move get stuck. When oxygen drops, they choke in their own homes. At Menindee, the fish kills were so bad that workers had to use bulldozers to push millions of rotting bodies off the dry riverbed. News footage shows endless piles of dead fish being scraped into heaps. The smell was awful. The scale was impossible to believe. This was not one bad day. It was the visible proof of a system that had already broken. The fish did not die from a sudden shock. They died because the things they needed to live had been taken away, slowly, over years, until nothing was left. The reason is simple. Fish need flow. Flow brings oxygen. Flow links places to live. Flow makes breeding happen. Without flow, fish have nowhere to go and nothing to keep them alive. The death of the fish is not a side problem. It is a direct sign that the river has stopped working as a river. Now look at the wetlands. They used to be full of birds. Floods came in wet seasons and spread across huge flat areas. They made shallow lakes that pulled in millions of water birds. The floods were hard to predict, but necessary. They made birds breed in huge numbers. Birds would fly in, build nests, raise their young, and leave. The wetlands were alive. But with water sent to farms instead, the floods do not come anymore. The wetlands have turned to dust. Cracked mud goes for miles where water used to sit. The protected wetlands that once held millions of birds are now empty. Bird numbers have dropped by 90% because the floods that make them breed do not happen anymore. The birds need the floods. Without them, there is no place to live, no food, no reason to come. The wetlands are not resting, they are dead. You can see this from space, the difference between the dry brown basin and the bright green farm patches is so clear you can spot it from satellites. The water is still there, it has just been moved. Footage from the air shows green farm channels running full right next to the main riverbed, which is dry and cracked. The water has not vanished. It has been taken. In some parts, the taking is so extreme that giant pumps actually pull the river backward. They suck water upstream toward farms, reversing the flow. The river is not flowing down to the ocean anymore. It is being pulled sideways, into ditches, onto fields, and out of the system completely. This is not natural. This is engineered draining. One crop, cotton, uses roughly 25% of the basin's water. Cotton is sold overseas. It is grown for money, not to feed people at home. The water it uses is water the system cannot afford to lose. Most of the basin's $24 billion farm output comes from using water the river needs to stay alive. The farming is not lasting. It is digging up something that will run out. And the taking does not stop at the river. Private farms use huge walls and dams to catch what is called overland flow. That is, water that falls as rain and runs across the ground before it ever gets to the river. Floodplain harvesting lets farms grab this water, store it in private dams, and starve the river before it even starts. The system is being drained from the top and the bottom. Water rights in the Murray-Darling are bought and sold on an open market. Water goes to whoever pays the most, not to where the system needs it. The river's life is a product for sale. When the price is right, water gets sold and sent somewhere else. The system has no way to protect itself. It can only lose. Without flow, the water left behind sits still. Still water heats up. Warm still water makes perfect conditions for toxic blue-green algae blooms. These blooms are so big you can see them from planes, covering the surface in thick green sheets. The water turns poisonous to people and animals. Towns that get their drinking water from the river have to find other sources. When the Darling River stopped flowing completely, outback towns had to use emergency wells and water trucked in from far away. The river they had counted on for generations could not help them anymore. Even the trees are dying. River redgums, some over 500 years old, grow along the banks. They are ancient giants that have lived through droughts, floods, and fires. But they need floods to reach their roots. Without those floods, they are dying of thirst. Trees that have stood for 500 years are falling because the water cycle they grew up with has been broken. The cascade is clear. River flow stops. Fish die. Wetlands dry up. Birds vanish. Salt builds up. Algae spreads. Trees die. Towns lose water. The whole basin system falls apart, one broken piece at a time. Scientists watching the river's pulse measure flow at key spots. Those flow numbers often hit zero. A river that stops flowing is not a river. It is a chain of cut-off, dying pools. Fish that used to swim freely are now stuck in separate pockets, unable to breed, unable to leave. The system has broken into pieces. The path ahead is not unclear. If water taking keeps going at the same rate, the Murray-Darling will stop being a river system. It will turn into a line of still ponds, split by dry beds, with no link to the ocean and no way to keep the systems that depend on it alive. This is not a guess. It is already happening. Even with billions spent on a basin plan meant to give water back to the river, nearly half of the target amount is still missing or lost to evaporation. The plan has failed to stop the collapse. The system is still being drained faster than it can heal. The gap between what the river needs and what it gets is not closing. It is growing. The signs to watch are simple. River flow numbers at key spots measure how healthy the system is. Fish counts track how the system is collapsing. The state of the river mouth shows whether the system can still reach the ocean. Salt levels in the lower lakes show whether the system is being flushed or poisoned. Water bird breeding shows whether the wetlands still work. Every single one of these signs is showing failure. The Murray-Darling Basin is not dying from drought. It is being drained on purpose. The water is not missing. It is being taken. The collapse is not a mystery. It is a choice. The river mouth is sealed. The fish are dead. The wetlands are dust. The trees are dying. The system is breaking. And the reason is visible in every dry channel, every running pump, every green field next to a cracked riverbed. This is not about saving a river because it feels good. It is about seeing that a $24 billion farm economy built on water the system cannot afford to lose is not going to last. It is temporary. And when the river finally stops working completely, the farms will stop too. The basin will not fix itself. The path is set. The only question is how far the collapse will go before the taking stops. Thank you for watching this case file. If this kind of clear diagnosis helps you see what is breaking, let me know in the comments. Should we look at a famous lake being poisoned by industry or a delta sinking into the ocean next? You decide.